Hello everybody, welcome to OCHD and welcome to another Jumpooty Heroes video. Today we're going to be talking about a very special announcement from the developers which came out this week, which you may already know if you follow on Twitter or if you're in the Discord, then you know. But this announcement is very exciting. There is a new series coming to the game, and we're going to talk about that series a little bit later because it's actually quite an important addition to the game, even though some people may not see it that way. And there's a few things I want to discuss regarding that. The first of which is that I think Jumpooty seems to be slowly pivoting the direction it was going in. We've had a lot of really bad decisions this year from the developers, and it's a bit difficult right now to say whether things are actually going to improve, because as it stands it doesn't necessarily look like that. But moving forward, there are some things coming up that are quite exciting, and I don't know if perhaps, I'm not saying definitely, but perhaps maybe there has been a change of management of some description. I'm not necessarily saying that the producer may have been changed, although I think that's the logical place I would go to, but either a producer change or something to do with the restructuring of the company, because there has been a restructuring this year. Something like that. Something has changed that has led to the devs doing things a little bit differently. Now, I think the main reason for this is probably because they spent so long trying to introduce the My Ship update, and it ended up being one of the most pointless money sinks any company has ever made, as far as I can see. They were trying to make the game like more of a social thing or whatever, but it's just a pointless update. It took so long, so many dev hours were putting into making that update, and ultimately, do you use it every day? No. It's a silly little update. It's like oh, it's a kind of cool thing, but it shouldn't take astronomical hours, and it doesn't have to be an update that has to be delayed constantly to get it out, because it's not generating the company any income as far as I can see. So I don't get it, and I don't know why it took so long, and I feel like if that is the decision that led to them going, hang on a minute, we need to change things up a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised. But to give you an idea of what I mean in terms of the change of trajectory, because there's been a few updates recently which, you know, some of them, well, maybe we should talk about in another video, I don't know. But this one I want to talk about here, and that is the series introduced to the game. And this is one that has sort of changed a lot over the years. 2018, it is not fair to compare 2018 to any of the other years that the game has been in operation. The first year of operation obviously has the largest amount of series because it's where we started. At launch, there were so many series in the game already, and we were getting like a new series every week, 2 weeks at one point. It was crazy. So even though 2018 was not even an entire year of operation for the game, we managed to get ourselves quite a few series. 86 series, so many I could barely fit them in. There's a fair bit of overlap, but so many series in there. And one of the things that I think is a little bit of a shame is a lot of these series either haven't been touched since or have barely been touched since, and there's a lot of really good ones in there that have just got nothing. I mean, I don't know how many times I've said about, oh, the World Cup's going on, they should have done some Captain Tsubasa stuff. Well, they didn't. And it's there, it's sitting there, it's barely been touched. It has been touched since launch, but barely. And there's plenty of series that came out in the first year of the game that got like literally one update and then they were done. And I don't necessarily think that every series needs to get additional content, but some of these series are somewhat decently sized and they've got barely anything to show for it, and it just feels very strange to me. So the fact that we're moving on to even more new series again feels weird, but I do think it's good to have more new series in the game, because it's potentially more series that people could be exposed to, maybe they'd enjoy, and potentially brings in more fans of these series into playing Jumpooty Heroes. But just look at that lineup, look how many series are there. And you think, okay, going from strength to strength, what did we get in 2019? We got 8, which is staggeringly low. Obviously, the JoJo's are all counted as separate parts, and the devs have always counted them as separate parts, and moving forward, I will, of course, count them as separate parts. But Yuna's Haunted Hot Springs and Bushizawa Receive and Stop Hibari-kun, Futafuku Jaguar. Now, Jaguar and Bushizawa both came in the same event, but that was right at the end of the year. And yeah, Promised Neverland, Shadow Lady. A lot of these series haven't had that much, but obviously the JoJo's got at least a decent chunk of content. Promised Neverland has had a feature festival, and Yuna's Haunted Hot Springs has actually had a decent sprinkling throughout the life cycle of the game. But as you can see, they're still continuing the trend of not everything we add is going to get a lot of content, and, well, a lot of these series did not get a lot of content, which is a shame. But in 2020, it went a bit wrong. 3 series added to the game. Obviously, Part 5 being added was something that we expected. It was a big deal. People were very happy when Part 5 was added. Weirdly, something that has not seen content since, as far as I can recall. I don't think there's been a single Part 5 character since. And JoJo, really, in terms of content it's had since here, has been sporadic at best. It's been, considering how huge a series is, it's been quite underrepresented. Boruto, on the other hand, has done quite well, and I think we will see more Boruto content moving forward. And Isobe has 1 character. Gotta keep the trend. There's got to be at least 1 series that gets nothing. Isobe has 1 character ever since it was launched in 2020, and that's all you get. Then in 2021, bit better. Honestly, I must say, it's a pretty good lineup. We've seen good use of Busa Renkin, we've seen good use of Siren, good use of We Never Learn. Those are 3 series that have got a whole chunk of content. But then the 3 at the bottom, Hochonin Ajihei, Kyumagare Orange Road, and Moeru Onisan, all got 1 character each. Only one of them got a gacha unit, and haven't been touched since. That's not to say they might not be touched in the future, but I think we all know they probably won't. Kyumagare Orange Road, maybe. The other 2, I don't think it's likely. Especially with Moeru Onisan, because that's like a... He's like a gag character sort of thing. You might get like other side characters added, but I feel like he's kind of like Jungle King Tachan. Although Jungle King Tachan has had a 2nd character, 3rd character even added, so maybe. Maybe. And then we come to 2022, which is this year. And this year, we have had 3 series. Technically 2, because one of them is coming out towards the end of the year, and that is Magical Patissier Kosaki-chan. The other 2 were added earlier in the year, Inamaru only getting 1 unit, and Shinigami Infirmary only getting 1 unit. You can see, actually, we've gone to the point where 2 out of 3 series have only got 1 unit. We don't know what Kosaki-chan might get. It might be more than 1 unit. It might be like I don't know, like a mini feature festival type thing. You might get a handful of characters. I'm not sure, but because we don't know, we can't say for sure. But the content coming from new series has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. 2021 had a little bit of a resurgence, but 2022 content almost entirely came from established series that I mean, I get it. They pay the bills. They keep the lights on, you know. Kimetsu no Yaiba, Shaw, and there are many other series I'm certain they were just certain in the eyes of the devs to get a feature festival. They had to have 1. Maybe they have to have 2. Maybe they have to have 3. And it just has to be in their plans every year. Dragon Ball didn't get a feature festival this year, interestingly. And maybe moving forwards, you know, maybe we're not getting a Naruto one, because normally it'd be in January and it's not there. So maybe we're not getting a Naruto one. So there is a slight tweak to the formula. But still, we were focusing mainly on the super popular series and not giving much love to the smaller ones. And it's fine for the most part. I do understand that. But that's not to say that there aren't super popular series that are not in the game. We've said it so many times before. Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, the Mission Yozakura family. So many huge series that just aren't in the game. And the theory up until now, roughly speaking, has been the game was released to celebrate the 50th anniversary. Maybe there's some sort of deal they made that they can't release any series that came after the 50th anniversary, or rather came after the release of Jumputi Heroes, or something along those lines. But ultimately, we had no proof either way. They would never confirm something like that. We didn't expect them to, really. But what we did want was some communication regarding series like Slam Dunk that just weren't in the game. Like, I get it. If you're talking about Shaman King, a lot of people would think should be in the game. We know there's a rights issue there that probably prevents it from being added. But for something like... for something as prestigious as Slam Dunk, especially considering the fact that it's getting a lot of promotion. It's got a new movie out this year. I think it came out like a couple of days ago, and it's got like tons of new content being pushed, and like new merchandise and art and stuff. You would think, you would imagine that it's something they would want to feature in the game, and they haven't yet, and that's a bit of a shame. And it does, you know, it raises the question: what is the barrier for entry? What is the problem preventing these series from being added? And then, well, fast forward to this year, when we actually had a live stream that announced some new series. It was during the 4.5 anniversary live stream, and they announced that there would be some new series coming soon. And surprisingly, it's 12 new series being added to the game. They weren't necessarily all announced at the same time, and technically could be 13, because there is the Naruto spin-off that was announced and hasn't been added yet, and most of the stuff that's been announced but it was never really added, it would be out either by now or within the next year or so. So we're expecting it within the next year or so, unless they've just decided not to do it, which I could somewhat understand, to be honest. But 12 new series is a lot. I mean, the numbers we were looking at before, we were talking about like 6 was like the highest after... Was 6 the highest? Was it 8 was the highest after the launch year? So this is going to be one of the highest since the launch year. And actually, this only accounts for like the first quarter, pretty much. Or maybe the first third. I don't know how long. Until the anniversary, until roughly the summer. That's roughly how long they've said it's going to be before we can expect these series to be coming out. So that's a big bump, and we could see even more. And it's, well, I mean, the question on everyone's mind is, will we see, say, for example, Jujutsu Kaisen? I want to say yes, and we'll talk about the potential reasons why it might be a yes later. But there's also another interesting thing. You see, back in 2022, I say back, it hasn't happened yet. In December of 2022, we are getting Magical Patricia Kosaki-chan, and this is a very important series. The reason it's very important is because it is not a Shonen Jump series. It is from Jump Plus. It was published in Jump Plus. It was not published in the weekly Shonen Jump magazine. And okay, yes, it does have ties to the Nisekoi series, but it's not like the Naruto spin-off that's just continuing the Naruto story. These are technically different characters, even though they have similar names or similar designs. They are technically different characters in a different world following a different story. And that means this is basically its own property, and it exists only on Shonen Jump Plus, not in weekly Shonen Jump. And, well, for those that don't know about Shonen Jump Plus, there's a whole bunch of series on there. Some of the ones that you would be probably familiar with. Spy Family is probably the biggest one I can think of off the top of my head. But you also have a series like, say, for example, Dandadan that has come out recently and has become insanely popular. And well, there's actually loads on there. Kaiju number 8, I think, is a Shonen Jump Plus series. And, well, I mean, just look up Shonen Jump Plus and you'll see there's quite a lot on there. Some things you might not even expect. And, well, if this has opened the door to more content like that being added, I'm very interested. There is the group of the crowd that I know are a little bit concerned that the more stuff that gets added, especially from other platforms, the less likely it is for series that deserve content that haven't got any yet to not get any more. And I do kind of agree with that. I would like them to focus on some of those series, but I mean, especially for something like, say for example, Dragon Quest. The fact that Dragon Quest hasn't had a feature festival yet, the fact that it hasn't had any content added to the game for the entire duration of its anime run is absolutely absurd to me. I cannot believe they haven't tried to capitalize on that, but they haven't. And we're in a weird situation where there's lots of series that are already on the game that I'd love to get some love, but there's loads of series I'd love to see added to the game, especially newer ones as well, and it's tough. But today, we're going to talk about those series, the series I mentioned that should be being added within the next year or so, and just go through them series by series and talk about just the series themselves, because I think a lot of people won't be exposed to these series. They won't know much about them. A lot of them are lesser known titles from manga artists that already have stuff in Shonen Jump, but some of them aren't. And we'll talk about those, and we'll try and work out what the devs are planning exactly. Okay, let's get started with the series. The first one I want to talk about is probably the one I'm least excited about. Not because I don't think it might add some cool content to the game that I might be happy to have, but just because we kind of already been here before, and that is, of course, Naruto, the Seventh Hokage, and the Scarlet Spring, which is just a side story of Naruto, not even really like a spin-off or anything. It takes place sometime in between Naruto and Boruto, and it's about Sarada Uchiha trying to track down and confront her father about the facts. Well, there's various reasons, but the eventual reason is she believes that her mother is not her actual mother. Sakura is not her mother, and instead she believes that Sasuke has been unfaithful and that Karin is her mother. And it's all just a big misunderstanding, and for some reason there's these test subject dudes that are related to Orochimaru's experiments, and they have the Sharingan, and this is actually the opportunity for Sarada to awaken her Sharingan. So I dare say that's what we will see if they do add content from this to the game. I like Naruto, and I'm pretty much on good terms with the entire story. I wouldn't, pick and choose bits of anime filler, but, all of the side stories are pretty good, pretty competently written, quite enjoyable. The main story is good. I'm actually quite a big fan of Boruto. There's a little bit of a disconnect between the manga and the anime, where the anime is maybe doing lots of things that the manga might like to do, but it's also doing lots of things that just seem largely unimportant. The major filler arcs and stuff like that. And I don't know, but I think it'll be cool once this is added, but quite frankly, of all the things that they've announced, it's not that exciting because we've already done so much Naruto stuff already. Next up, I want to talk about Gunblaze West, which is made by Nobuhiro Watsuki. You will know Watsuki for creating Rurouni Kenshin and Busou Renkin, 2 series that have got a decent amount of love in Jumputi, and of the 3 works that will be in Jumputi from Watsuki, Gunblaze West is definitely the shortest. It's very short, and for all the series here today that we're going to be talking about today, the ones that I wasn't familiar with, I tried to at least read the first chapter, and if failing that, I would just read what I could and figure out what I could about the series. In this case, Gunblaze West is available on the Shonen Jump app, so you can read the whole thing. I have only read the first chapter or 2, and it seems really, really generic, unfortunately, which is strange because I think in terms of like a Western style manga, there are lots of those, but most of them are like Western style but they're like set in the future, or they're set on another planet or whatever. I'm thinking of stuff like Trigun, is more like Western inspired rather than actually being a Western. But this is just a Western, and I felt like I hadn't seen that before. Maybe I have, but I can't think of anything. But ultimately, it's a bit dry. I don't know. I guess it's kind of, how Kenshin is like, it's not really a twist. It's literally just like, it's about the war. It's about after the war, and like just a guy with a sword. It's pretty basic. It's just very well drawn and very well written. In the case of Gunblaze West, I mean, the drawing is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just this. I didn't really enjoy it. I've got to be honest. Maybe if I'd read a little bit more, I would have gotten into it. But I wasn't too excited about any of the characters or the plot lines. So of all the series being added, this is probably one of the ones I'm less excited about. But there's certainly more coming later that I am very much excited about. Next up, I want to talk about Mieru Hito. Now, I didn't really know what to expect about this series. It's made by Toshiaki Iwashiro, who created Siren, and I'm actually a big fan of Siren. I was very happy when it was added to Jump Booty, and I was kind of thinking, well, I've never read this, but it's made by somebody who's made something that I really enjoy, so maybe I will enjoy this. I did sort of have the same thought of Gunblaze West, because I did quite like Kenshin. Busou Renki was more okay than anything else. But in the case of Siren, I really like Siren, so maybe I'll like Mieru Hito. And after reading the first chapter, I would say it's kind of an interesting premise. It's maybe nothing mind-blowing, nothing super exciting, but it was okay. The main character's design is a bit odd. I don't know. Something about his sunglasses and his eyes, like, it just doesn't quite line up with the actual character when he takes the sunglasses off. It's very strangely drawn to me. I don't know. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty good start. The first chapter, admittedly, is not a lot to go off of, but it was okay, and I'm probably gonna read it. I'm probably gonna read the whole thing. It's not that long, so why not? And I'll be excited to see what they add to the game, though I'm expecting it will be one character. But you never know. You never know with these devs. There's some series that are very, very small. They've actually got a little bit of something, a few handful of characters, and then there's some massive series that have like hardly any characters. So they might surprise us here, but I haven't read the whole thing, so there might not be any characters worth adding other than the main character. We shall see. Next up, we have M0. Now, this is the first series on our list that is not by an author that is already in Jump Booty. Yasuhiro Kano does not have any other works in Jump Booty. I have not read this before. I read the first chapter just for this video, and I really enjoyed the premise. And I think of all the series we've talked about so far, it seemed like it had probably the most content to work with. Don't know whether that means it's going to get a full-fledged feature festival, or whether it's just going to be sort of part of the mix of all the other series being added. I don't know how those are going to be added either. Is it going to be some kind of new series carnival or festival or something? I don't know. But it was actually quite an interesting first chapter. Now, some of the series we're going to be talking about later, I would categorize, and I don't know whether people would agree with me, maybe it's a little bit harsh, but I would categorize them as straight up smut. And we're going to have to talk about those because they're being added to the game, and maybe that's a bit of a polarizing opinion on those series. This series steps its pool, its foot into the pool of like a little bit of romance, there's a little bit of something going on there, but the main focus of the first chapter was definitely on like the action of what the story is and teaching us about the world, and I was quite enjoying it. I was quite having a good time, so I probably will pick this up. I am going to add it to my list, and I have a feeling it might just get itself a feature festival, but I would say, of all the series we're about to talk about, I would put this series into the respectable category. It doesn't come under smut. But that may change in later chapters. I haven't read that far. But there's definitely some stuff here that, oh boy. Oh boy. And the next series I want to talk about is DNA 2 by Masakazu Katsura. This is an artist that has some stuff in the game already, a significant amount of stuff in the game already. 4 series in the game already. You would think that 4 series would equate to a significant amount of content, but sadly, it doesn't. We have, I think, 1 character from Wingman, I believe 1 character from Aizu, we have like 1 character, I think, from Shadow Lady, and I think we have 3 characters from Video Girl Ai. So I don't know why the devs decided, you know what, these are very important series from like a renowned artist and writer, and we want to immortalize these in Jump Hootie Heroes with 1 character. That seems silly to me, and part of me thinks maybe there's some sort of plan there. Maybe they thought at some point we'll do a Sensei feature with these, and they just never got around to it, and maybe now's the time. I mean, we know for a fact there is a new Sensei feature coming up, which, by the way, they haven't done a Sensei feature since like 2019, so we all thought that that was dead. That idea was gone. Like, maybe it just didn't work and they decided not to do it, but potentially there is an opportunity to have another go at it here. The one they're releasing in February is going to be releasing in the first 2 weeks of February, which historically means there's going to be other stuff going on. There's always other stuff going on in February, whether it's like a Valentine's Day type thing, whether it's like a related to the Tower anniversary, the Sparks of a Lost Civilization anniversary. There's plenty of other stuff going on. They're going to be able to put limiteds from popular series in there that people are going to wail on. So it's less of a risk to put content on that is from series that maybe won't draw them in as much income. And so I think that feature festival, or that Sensei feature rather, is going to do quite well. And I'm hoping that's what they're planning to do here as well. I don't know when on the timeline that would be, but I'm hoping that is the case, because Wingman, Aizu, at least those 2 I can think of significant characters that have not been included in the game that should be included in the game. Shadow Lady is a lot shorter, and I haven't I've read like 1-2 chapters, so I'm not too sure how much is missing from that. And then Video Girl Ai, well, there probably is a lot more content to work with, even though we have already got 3 characters. So all in all, you could definitely pull together a Sensei feature with these 5 series put together, and I'm hoping that's what they've planned. Now, as for the series itself, DNA 2, it's a bit odd. I'm going to be honest with you. If you've been reading the synopsis, you will probably be thinking, that sounds a bit odd. And it was. Now, to be fair to the series, the only translations I could find were some of the crustiest scans I have ever seen, and some of the crustiest translations I've ever seen too. So, to the series' credit, I have not seen it at its best. Just putting that out there. But in terms of what I was able to garner from the chapter that I did read, it's a bit odd. I think the characters are well drawn. I like the aesthetic of Aoi, and I think there's definitely something there that could be quite good. I've only read the first chapter, so I don't know where it goes from there. It is giving me the feeling of some other stuff I've read that, now that I think about it, is just straight up smut. And this was a bit less so. So potentially there's something there. I think big fans of the series will come to its defense, I'm sure, because it is quite popular in the history of Jump. But definitely an inclusion I'm looking forward to, because I definitely think Katsura's sprites in Jump Hootie look incredible, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of them. But yes, very, very nice series. And now I want to talk about Koisome Momiji, which is a series by a writer that doesn't have anything else in Jump, Sugiru Sakamoto, but an artist that I'm sure we'll all be familiar with, Tadahiro Miura, the creator of Yuna's Haunted Hot Springs. Just doing the art for this series, but you can tell probably from the cover of the first volume there, you know what's up. You know what this guy's specialty is. You know what's going on. And to be fair, the series itself is probably a little bit more on the innocent side compared to some of the other stuff we have that we're going to be talking about later. But I think it was very clear that Miura was... something was brewing. Something was brewing deep within. And eventually that became the absolute godless series that is Yuna's Haunted Hot Springs. But luckily... didn't go too far in this series. It's mostly, well, I mean, I've only read the first chapter, to be fair, but in the first chapter, it wasn't too much in the way of smut. It was quite clean, although the drawings of the characters, I mean, you can tell they're heavily moving in the direction of what you will see in Yuna's Haunted Hot Springs. But in terms of the plot, let's forget the art for now. The plot, yeah, pretty innocent in terms of like a sort of like a romance type thing. It's not a very long series, so I do wonder, maybe I will read it and see how it ends. I'm not too sure. But the first chapter was cute, innocent romance, like nothing too deep, nothing super big to grip me in, but hey, you know, it might be good. I'm definitely going to give it a try. And at least this one has some translated chapters, unlike some of the other stuff we're going to be talking about a bit later. Next up, we're going to be talking about the first of a trio of series from the same manga artist, which I have to sort of preface that when I was talking about smut, this is what I was talking about. These three series coming up. So the first one is Ane Doki, and I'm trying to think of the three. I'm trying to rank them in my head. Which ones are like, which ones are the worst, and which ones are, they're kind of all as bad as each other in their own way. So this one is about a questionable high school girl and this guy in middle school. It's a bit off. I'm gonna be honest with you. If you're a fan of Kawashita Sensei's art and stories, I would argue that all three series, even though they're varying lengths and obviously they're always going to be compared to Ichigo 100%, if you're a fan, I mean, to be fair, they all are pretty solid in terms of the art. They're pretty, like, the story is questionable. Yes, it's questionable, of course, but they're all sort of equally questionable, so it's fine. And I think she's done a good job of not going too far just yet. So whether or not that changes in later chapters, I don't know, but at least in the first chapter didn't go too crazy. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about the smut trio, because I read all three of them the first chapter. Luckily they all had their first chapter translated, which was nice. And of them, I suppose, strictly speaking, Lilem Kiss would be like the most degenerate of the three. But yeah, it's just, you get a little bit of whiplash reading some of the stuff in Jump, because it's just, it's seen as like a certain type of story is like very prevalent in the pages of Jump. And to be fair, most of the time that's true. But obviously Kawashita Sensei has had 4 different works added to Jumputi, 4 different works that were in Weekly Shonen Jump, and 4 different works that were all in their own way absolute degeneracy. So yeah, like I said, I think if you're a fan of Ichigo 100%, you could probably pick up any of these 3 series and you'd get something out of it. You'd get some enjoyment out of it. Whether the story's for you or not, I guess that depends. I know some of these synopses are a little bit too long, and they probably don't really do justice to what the series is about, but if at any point you're having trouble reading it, just give it a quick pause, or you can look it up for yourself. That's up to you. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be reading any of them, unfortunately. Then next up, we have one that sadly I couldn't read the first chapter of, which is strange, because as far as I know, the first chapter was translated by Viz. but for the life of me, I can't find anything more than like a snippet here and there online. I cannot find the full chapter. I don't know if they removed it, I don't know. But we're of course talking about Lycopen, the tomatoey poodle. Now, the story is by Rokuro Sano, who as far as I know has no affiliation with any other series in Jumputi. But Koji Oishi, people that know will know. Oishi Sensei was pushing hard to get one of his other works added to the game. That is, of course, Inamaru Dashi. Even made a special chapter just about Jumputi heroes. And, well, it worked, to be fair. Inamaru Dashi did indeed get into Jumputi. And I would say it's happened again. It's happened again. Now, if you're wondering about this series, I mean, at first look, yes, the title page looks like a Sanrio character or something like that. But of course, as quite often happens with characters with cutesy designs, they are not what they seem. And this series is just it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't want to like trash it because it's a bit harsh. I haven't really been able to read it properly, so it's a bit unfair. But it's just like I said, just when I was talking about degenerate filth before, it's a different kind of degenerate filth. Within the space of the first chapter, not even the first chapter, I had a preview of the first chapter. You will see this character here spreading their asshole in the middle of the page. Why? Who knows? If I could read, maybe I would know. But realistically, don't think it matters whether I know or not, because it's like, why is it doing that? And yeah, it's just this weird story. But then again, if anybody knows about Inamaru Dashi, they'll know it's a weird story. That it seems to have this loyal following, small but loyal. And as far as I know, this series is still going on in Shonen Jump Plus, but it did start in Weekly Shonen Jump. So cool, I guess, if it gets added. I'm sure the sprite will look cool enough. I'm a little bit worried about what the animations will be, but hopefully nothing too crazy. Then next up, we have one that, again, I wasn't able to read properly. I had to read it in pure Japanese. There was no translations that I could find online. But what I did find was horrific. Absolutely horrific. Now, I can't speak for the story at all. This was the only synopsis I was able to get for the series Taizo Mote King Saga by Amon Dai. So obviously, as you can imagine, not a lot to go off, and I had to read the chapter in Japanese, which, again, don't speak Japanese, so that's pretty tough. But I got through the chapter, and I came to realize that if you, say for example, if you've read Bobobo, you'll be familiar with the chaotic energy of that series. It kind of just, there is just crazy stuff happening like all the time, and it's just going left to right with the gags, and it's, if you're into it, you're really into it. And if you're not into it, you're like, whoa, what the hell is this shit? And I would categorize this as a very similar series. Unfortunately, in terms of the gags, I can't really keep up. From what I understand, the author makes a lot of references to JoJo. He's a big fan of JoJo. I saw that on the JoJo wiki. So whether that's true or not, I can't say. Although I do know that one of the volume covers does have an homage to one of the JoJo covers, so fair enough. But yeah, in the first chapter, I can't really put into words how weird it is, how like off-putting it was. Like at one point, this demon character has like some sort of other demon that's dressed in like a Borat-esque Speedo mankini thing coming out of his asshole, and I think it would be a very tough read even in English, but in Japanese I had no idea what was going on. So of course I'm somewhat reserving judgment because I can't read it properly. At the same time, I have absolutely no desire to read this series. What this character will be like when added to the game and in what context they'll be added to the game, I don't know. And I don't care. So it's cool that new stuff's being added, but it's weird. It's really, really weird. And next up, something more familiar, something more comforting, something that I'm very much looking forward to, and that is, of course, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 6, Stone Ocean by Hirohiko Araki. We're all familiar with JoJo at this point. We've had 5 JoJo parts in Jump Uti already, and we're hoping for 7 and 8 to come along at some point. I think at this point, any confusion over whether it be allowed in or anything like that is sort of irrelevant. We've had series that are just not from Weekly Shonen Jump added now. We've had content that's just not from Weekly Shonen Jump, so I don't know why either of the JoJo parts that aren't in Weekly Shonen Jump. I know Part 7 did have like a few chapters in Weekly Shonen Jump, but generally speaking, I believe it's from Ultra Jump. But regardless, I don't see any reason why those can't be added. And as for Part 6, it's getting a feature festival, which it deserves, and I'm pretty happy about. And I'm a little bit torn, because part of me thinks, how could they not tie this in with the anime release? Like, it just seems so obvious. At the same time, Netflix's handling of the anime release globally was one of the biggest disservices I have ever seen to an anime franchise this big. It's absolutely absurd. People were so excited for this, and I feel like they did everything they could to kill the hype, which is really just like, they haven't mishandled other series like that. I mean, maybe they've mishandled some, but generally speaking, the anime releases have been fine on Netflix as far as I can recall. So why they chose to do JoJo like this, I do not know. But I do love Part 6 of JoJo. I'm very excited for the feature festival to be added. I'm not even sure which characters they're going to choose, but I mean, a lot of the popular ones come to mind. As long as Foo Fighters gets added, I'm happy. And yeah, there's not much else to say. I mean, people who know, they know. You know, JoJo finally getting Part 6. We've essentially completed the proper Weekly Shonen Jump collection of JoJo series, so pretty damn exciting stuff. And I do wonder, with them sort of opening the door to more content from outside the magazine, yeah, of course, Part 7 and Part 8, but there's a load of JoJo spin-offs as well. How many of those would be eligible? And at what point are we going to wrap around and pick up some of the stuff missing from the JoJo parts from before? Like, there's still some prominent characters from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that haven't been added. So I'll be interested to see that as well, but very excited for this. And then finally, the reason we're making this video, the new announcement that we had, which was, of course, the release of Me and Roboco into Weekly Shonen Jump. Created by Shuhei Miyazaki, who, yes, does not have any works in Jump Uti, but you might be familiar with some of the stuff they've done. They did a spin-off to One Piece, sort of like a gag version of One Piece. Same thing with The Promised Neverland, which is probably what they're most famous for prior to Me and Roboco. And this series, I really like this series. I really do. I know it's not for everybody, and I really do feel like there's different types of gag manga in Weekly Shonen Jump throughout the years, and some of them do fall into the sort of chaotic category I mentioned before. And this has a somewhat chaotic presence, but it's nowhere near as bad as Taizo Mote King Saga or something like Bobobo, which is just absolute insanity. But it's not quite as mild as something like High School Family or something like that. It hits a sweet spot for me that I'm really quite comfortable with. I think there were a lot of other series trying to do this at the same time that maybe didn't quite hit the mark. But you know, that's fine. Somebody's got to do well and somebody's got to not do well, and then whichever series doesn't do well, maybe the author gets another shot in the future, another series that might work out. But Me and Roboco, I really do like it. I love how it's sort of a joke in the series about how it's like they're trying to take over the world with their popularity, and they're trying to get popular on social media, and they're trying to get like an anime and all this stuff, and inadvertently they have done all these things. I keep seeing it on Twitter everywhere. Obviously the anime is now released and being added to Jump Uti, which is awesome. I do believe there was even a Jump Uti reference in a Me and Roboco chapter at one point, so that was pretty cool as well. And me and Roboco, if you're not familiar, all of the covers are references to other famous covers. In this case, Volume 1 is a reference to Doraemon. Now, that's very interesting because that is one of the most popular series of all time. And it is not a Shonen Jump series. It's not even a Shueisha series. It's from a completely different publisher. And they got away with this one. And they've done that a few times. And I feel like Me and Roboco is a series that does try and get away with a lot of things. And it's most of the time, it does seem to work out for them. And I'm very happy to see it added to the game. And my hope is that we're going to get a decent amount of content. We already know that the main character and, well, the titular character are both planned to be added. But beyond that, we're a little bit short on information. We don't know. They're going to be adding an event in January, and we know that Bobobo has a special event in January, so it could be some sort of gag festival. That might even be when we see Taizo Mote King Saga added as well. I don't know. But I am very excited for this. And the thing I'm most excited for is what this potentially means for the future of Jumputi, because Me and Roboco is the first series to be added that came out in Weekly Shonen Jump after Jumputi Heroes was released. And so many series fall into that category, and we were unclear on when or if those series would be added. We're talking about, you know what series I'm talking about. Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen, blah blah blah, etc, etc. So in the same way that I think the Nisekoi spin-off, Magical Patricia Kosaki-chan, potentially opens a lot of doors for series outside of Weekly Shonen Jump, I think Me and Roboco opens the door for a load of series that are inside Weekly Shonen Jump but felt somewhat out of reach for a little while. And so the reason behind me thinking that maybe things have taken a turn is everything I've talked about today, including this, including the Magical Patricia Kosaki-chan, including everything. We've had a massive change in direction for this game all of a sudden. And we're seeing feature festivals for series that wouldn't have got them before. We're seeing characters get limited from series that wouldn't have got them before. And I am thinking either we have changed producer from Fuji to somebody else, or potentially maybe the focus has been moved away from all the projects they were working on before. You know, the My Ship project, it was a lost cause. And just leave it as it is, give some rewards from it every once in a while and be done with it. It's not something that needs insane amounts of man hours invested into it. Focus on stuff like this, trying to get new series into the game, and series that people want to see, and characters from series that people want to see. And yeah, okay, sure, a lot of the popular characters are going to keep coming back, but I really do think it's important to only add version 2s and version 3s and so on and so forth of characters when it's necessary, and not just because you feel like it. Because there's so much content to work with from Weekly Shonen Jump. If somebody's desperate for their favourite character to be added, they could be waiting years and years and years. And that's a shame, you know. If you're a fan of Dr. Stone and you've been waiting for Kaseki to be added, which is not insane, he's a very popular character, well, tough luck. You've got another version of Taiju. 2 versions of Taiju in the same year. And don't get me wrong, I wanted Taiju to be added, but it was weird, right? It was weird that they did it this way, and they've done that a few times, and it's a bit of a shame to me. I'd like us to see new stuff as often as possible. But I'm hoping, I'm praying that we're slowly moving in a good direction for the game. I'm not sure if I can say anything definitively for now, but this series being added, for me, is the big standout, shining golden beacon that we've been looking for. The proof that anything that came out after Jumputi Heroes launched is still eligible, is still game. Now, is this maybe a case of it's only because we're coming up to the 55th anniversary of Jump, it's only because we're coming up to the 5th anniversary of Jumputi, maybe they've renegotiated the deal, something like that, I don't know. But I don't really care. I just want this stuff added, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm happy it's going to be here. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you somehow got to the end of this video, let me know, of all the series we talked about today, which one are you most looking forward to? But until next time, see ya.